Hey everyone, welcome to the VR CEO podcast, sponsored by the amazing VR conferencing and education tool, Roomy. Woohoo! Why meet when you can Roomy? Get it? Roomy? Pretty awesome. Good stuff. All right, 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Hey, Emily. Emily, not a hard name to pronounce except for anyone but me. Thank you so much for coming on the VR CEO podcast. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Really, really happy to have you here. You have a crazy story, really interesting life, and I'd like to get into some specific aspects of it. But what I'd like is if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, just your personal journey, start anywhere up to today, and we'll go from there.
Okay, start anywhere. Born in Dallas, didn't breathe when I was born. Parents were a little worried, but I did start, and from then on I've felt pretty lucky throughout life. I think that's a theme that I might cover during this, but moved all around as a kid, Alaska, Germany, Texas, and settled in Washington about 15 years ago. So this has been home ever since.
Awesome. Well, it's quick.
And we're done.
And we're done. A great podcast. Bye, everyone. It was fun. I'm actually really happy that you started breathing because I get to talk to you today. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a good decision.
Good thing. It's a good decision on your part. Well, interesting. So you have an interesting life. So you actually used to be at Como News, right?
Yeah, so I never intended to head that way. When I was in college, I needed an internship to graduate, and Como hired me. You know, I loved writing. That's one thing that I did know. I was terrible at math and science, but writing I excelled at. And so Como hired me, and I hated news at the time. I hated watching the news, reading it. I thought it was really depressing. But I fell in love with being in a newsroom, and I was on the assignment desk as an intern and fell in love with the hustle and bustle and breaking news, and every day is different. And so I learned how to write for television news and headed over to Northwest Cable News once I graduated and started as a freelance writer and worked my way up to an executive producer over the course of about 5.5 years, and then went back to Como and produced over there before I decided to get out.
What did you do as a writer, though? Like, what would you specifically write for the news?
The stories that air. So basically in TV news, you have the producer that, I guess you call it stacking a show. So basically they look at what's happening that day, they decide what the most important news is of the day, and they just lay out the show into a few different blocks, as you would call it, and the producer will, assign the anchors to read the stories, they'll write the teases, and then the writers are the ones who are going in and actually writing what the anchors read.
Gotcha. So it's not like, hey, I'm writing, it's not like fake news, right? Like, here's the news for today. I just wrote it up. On my
fake
lunch
news
break.
didn't exist when I was in it.
But Good. Oh, interesting. So this is you, right? Like, when was this at Como for?
That was actually my very last day. So that was 2011, according to Facebook.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was actually trying to figure out the year based on fashion, and I couldn't do it. I tried hard.
Fashion
so I was like,
and hair, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, maybe hairstyle. And I was thinking, okay, did Monica or have that hairstyle on Friends? I don't know.
Why do people get bangs? It's the worst decision ever. Never again.
I don't think it's that bad, actually. What about, like, maybe a sweet fro would look good on you?
Oh, that's much better.
Much better. I agree.
Dan Lewis looks so little there. And Eric
he does.
Huge.
Yeah, what's going on?
That's great. And if you've seen Dan since his retirement, he does have a lot more hair on his head. I think you would like
that. Is that a bald joke?
It wasn't, but...
But it can be. Okay, great. Awesome. Excellent. So you were actually an Emmy winner. Tell us about that. I have a photo here. This looks like an amazing night, too. Wait, where is it? Is it this one? No. It's
Oh,
this
that's a
photo
beautiful
here.
photo. That looks good. No.
Yeah.
Uh,
What was this all about? This looks great.
so that is Natus television Emmys, and I had been nominated for several, and that was the first year I won. And it's great, but the way I won it, I don't love. I actually won it because it was because of a show that I produced. It was special coverage for four fallen police officers. If you remember the Lakewood police officer shooting back in, I think it was 2009. And
I
so,
do.
yeah, so we were on the air for hours. Dan Lewis, Kathy Gertson were my anchors, and I felt good in the sense that I was able to produce this beautiful coverage that really paid tribute to these four fallen heroes. But at the same time, do I want to win an award for that? No. So, definitely some mixed emotions about that. And that was actually one of the reasons I got out of TV. I produced 3 fallen hero memorials in a span of about 3 months, and that's when it was time to
Oof.
go.
That's tough. That's got to be a really, really hard thing. Like, how do you even cope with something like that?
I don't know that you do. A lot of people think that you just harden up, and I think some people do that, and they're not affected by what they're reporting on or writing. But at Como, the people I was surrounded with, we all felt the stories that we were writing and talking about. And I remember that day on set where Dan Lewis, who's so sensitive, he was crying on set. And Kathy Gertson, she was staying really strong, and then, Dan slid the tissues over to her, and she was just crying too. And at that moment, and, I'm crying in the booth, it was just a sobbing mess. But at that moment, it's nice to know that people are still human. Dan was in news for many years, and he had a huge heart. And I'm glad that, you can still have feelings after covering such horrible stories.
Yeah, that's tough. It's got to be, I have always imagined that when you're in the news covering these things, that it hardens you, right? It hardens you to these emotions, but it's nice to hear that that's actually not the case. You are still human, and you're reporting on these 4 fallen heroes, and I think you did them a really good service. I actually say that's maybe what you won the award for, doing something, reporting on that. It at least had some positive impacts. And I
Yeah.
think that's might be a good thing. It's a hard thing to do. And,
Right.
and it's got to be tough for you because you've actually had an interesting life. And I think when you look back in your life, all of these things may have been building on each other to prepare you for something that you personally survived and others reported on. And I actually really want to just jump right into that. It's the Route 91, right? You were in Las Vegas during the Las Vegas shooting, and you're a bona fide, legitimate Las Vegas shooting survivor.
Yeah, it's pretty surreal to hear that even now, more than a year later. And that was our third Route 91 concert that we had been to, and one of our favorite weekends of the year with our friends who live in the LA area, and just a weekend full of laying by the pool during the day, betting on college football during the afternoon, and then heading to a great concert in the evening. And we always looked forward to that weekend. And backing up a little bit, I've hated guns my whole life. I don't care that people own them as long as they're smart about it. I've never had a desire to, but I think growing up and living in Germany and hearing about gangs, guns have always scared me. And then in college, my freshman year, my friend's dad, who was a professor at PLU where I started my college studies, he was shot and killed on campus. And I had been at his house the night before for dinner. And that still affects me today. And then I went to, oddly enough, another music festival when I was 19 in Little Rock, Arkansas, and I was held up at gunpoint. And then, I'm in TV and I cover all these horrific shootings. And I became a really paranoid person because I've never been the type of person to think like, oh, this won't happen to me. This doesn't happen in your backyard. But I've always been one to think like, no, this could happen. And then next thing you know, I'm in the middle of our country's deadliest mass shooting. It's insane.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, that's a hard thing. It's interesting. I didn't actually know that about you. I remember the professor. I think he was a psychology professor, if I remember. Um,
He was a music
music.
professor.
Okay,
And
I
then
remember that.
also, yeah, the same freshman year, I was at a party that one of my friends threw, and the deck collapsed and killed a girl underneath. So freshman year was just really rough for me, and I ended up studying abroad after that. I went to Australia for 6 months, and when I came back, I transferred, and I just needed a new environment, start fresh. But all those things, they still stuck with me throughout the years. They've definitely affected me.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to, and it's interesting because you've experienced these things. A lot of people that have strong opinions on this specific, very polarizing topic of, firearms in America, um, can't really appreciate it, right, like you do. And I think it's because a lot of us suffer from something called the inertia of rest. And you hear that a lot, like, oh, I didn't think it could happen to me, or I never
Mm-hmm.
thought this could happen to me. And you think that until it happens to you. And it's got to be a really difficult thing to process and to get past so that you can move on. I'm actually not sure you ever get past something like that.
I don't believe you do. I have been through so much therapy, and I don't think you can ever really get past it. Or people will say like, so are you over it? No, I'm not over it. I never will be over it. But what therapy has done for me is it's allowed me to learn how to cope, and it's given me different coping mechanisms to the point where I can come to work. We have a lot of networking events here. I can enter a room with a smile, and I can work the room. What people don't know is what's actually happening inside of me at that time. I have serious concentration issues, and at any given moment, my mind will it'll take me back to the night of the concert, and I'm hearing gunshots, and I have a head on a swivel no matter where I am. So it's with me 24/7.
Yeah.
And the best you can do is just try those different coping mechanisms.
Right. Yeah. And it's, I would say therapy is a very good thing to do. It's like, if your knee hurts, you go to the doctor. I think it's a very good thing to help you cope with that. And it's got to be tough because you and I met at the Seattle World Trade Center during an event, I believe.
Yes.
And, I imagine that's got to be a really tough thing because you're around all these people in a very similar environment, right? The environments are analogous to each other. You've got a Route 91 concert where you're quite frankly having a great time and you're there and something you look forward to every day. And then worst possible scenario happens to you. And that's got to be analogous to some of these other scenarios that you actually that you're in charge of, right? At the World Trade
Yeah.
Center. Yeah.
I mean, looking at this picture, Kyle's we were engaged at the time, he's now my husband. He's wearing a Sunday Funday shirt. I had actually gotten that shirt when we were in Chicago. And that shirt, he ended up taking it off and putting it on a woman, covering her gunshot wound. And his shorts were covered in blood. And it's just so crazy to, Sunday Funday, not exactly how it ended.
Not exactly how it ended.
But,
And with this, go ahead.
well, with work, I mean, you're right. It's tough being in crowds. I remember the first event that we had after I came back. It was one of our quarterly member receptions, and we have about 150 business leaders in those. And I always open up the program and introduce our co-chairs, and I'm in the middle of speaking, and all of a sudden I realize I have no idea where I am in the script. Like I didn't know what I had said. I didn't know where I was. And so I said, and with that, here is our co-chair, Stein Cruz. And I just brought him up. And I don't think anyone in the audience knew, but at that point I was like, I can't continue because I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I would say, I'm not a psychologist, but you're definitely suffering from some measure of PTSD.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, mostly it's anxiety that I deal with.
And how is it helping? Is the therapy helping at all?
I'm not in therapy, so that's the other frustrating part is, my work, they gave me a resource for the employee assistance program, and when I got home, I called all the different therapists listed, and none of them really specialized in PTSD. One of them did, and I went, but it was in a not so great neighborhood, and I thought I was about to witness a drive-by shooting. So I found someone else who I was paying for out of pocket, and on the second session, she's like, oh, actually, I can't bill to this code. I can't see you any longer. And so then you have to start over, and each time you're telling your story, and I don't mind telling my story, but like it's time consuming, and I don't want to keep telling it before a therapist decides if they can see me. So the third one I found, she's a combat veteran, and she was amazing. And I saw her for several months. She was just awesome woman. And then she decided to quit her practice, and I was just about in tears. And so it took me months after that to find someone new, and I was told they specialize in PTSD. I went and saw him on the very first visit. I knew there's no way this guy knows, how to help me. And I said, I'm going to give him a shot. So I saw him, I think, 3 times. And it was that third visit where he's like, huh, so you want to learn how to not live in fear? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, huh. Well, it sounds like you're doing all the right things. I mean, maybe you could meditate. And at that moment, I'm like, okay. And so quit him, and then I discovered UW has a program, and it's a clinical trial, and so I was approved for that, and I'll be starting that in April. I've gone through the first couple of sessions and the lab tests, where they make really loud noises and try and scare you and see how you react, so that's super fun. But I figure at least, if the therapy doesn't help me, at least I'm helping out my school, which, there's something to that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, something positive will come out of it, one way or the other.
So.
And that's what, I didn't want to focus on the Las Vegas shooting. I didn't want to have you tell us about that because, quite frankly, I didn't want you to relive that. It's too traumatic. But instead, what I'd like to focus on is what you're doing now, since then, because I think it's really powerful and something a lot of people might not do after something so traumatic.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
So when I got home, I escaped out of there with just scrapes and bruises. There was a point during the shooting where I did fall and I thought I was shot, and there were bullets whizzing by my head and one through my hair, and there wasn't any blood. And so I did get up and I kept running. But even though I left with just scrapes and bruises, I was a completely different person. And I wanted to wear a huge sign that said, I just went through this, be gentle, be kind. The world needs more kindness. I didn't want sympathy or empathy. I just wanted people to be gentle with me. And I really struggled with survivor's guilt. And we lost 58 people that day. That's a lot of people. And then 500 more were shot in addition. So I told you at the beginning of this, I've always considered myself pretty lucky for some of the things I've gone through life. And I don't want to say I was lucky that night because that means that the people who didn't survive were unlucky. And that's just not right. I don't know why we got out, but we did. And so it was from that point on where I decided that in order to heal, I was going to need to find a way to try and make a difference in this world and make sure that there was never a next deadliest mass shooting. So I also mentioned before, I hate politics. And what I did was I started researching all of our different senators and, who's been working on passing bills. And so I actually was connected with someone who used to head a Washington Ceasefire, a local nonprofit, and the day that he messaged me back on LinkedIn saying he wanted to meet me for coffee, it was just a huge sense of relief where I was like, oh my gosh, maybe tonight I'm going to be able to sleep. Up until this point, I had slept in clothes with shoes by my bed in case I needed to run. And here I was like, okay, this might be good. So I ended up joining the board, and it wasn't quite the right fit for me. But I'd been working with Senator Fraught, and he has been pushing hard to pass a few bills for gun responsibility and gun safety. And we met at an event. He called me the next day. He had me testify in Olympia in January 2018, and we've stayed pretty close since then. And I also got connected with the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, which is a larger nonprofit here in Washington. And last October, I joined the board for their foundation. And I have helped them a lot by whether it's, I just wrote an op-ed. I think it'll be published tomorrow. And then, doing videos for their luncheons and speaking out at press conferences. And not to ramble, but what I'm trying to accomplish through all this is letting people know that you don't need a bullet in your body to be a victim of gun violence. And I had those scrapes and bruises, but I might as well have had a bullet in my head or my heart. That's how much it hurt and affected me. And
I can...
What was that?
No, go ahead, please.
A really hard part for me was when the scrapes healed, because I actually cried when my knees healed. Like, how weird is that? Normally people would be really happy that they're not bleeding and their knees don't look disgusting anymore. But I felt like because I was healing physically, that meant I was supposed to be healing mentally, which I wasn't. And again, that's where I wanted a giant sign to be like, be gentle. So it's tough when someone looks at you and they don't see anything that's wrong with you and they don't realize what you've been through. So through my work with the Alliance and testifying the last 2 years, it's just me. I've been trying to say emotional scars can be just as bad as the physical wounds, and they're with you for the rest of your life. And I think more needs to be done for gun violence survivors as well.
Yeah, I think that statement. Go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead, Matt. Okay, I was going to say, I think it's really interesting because I agree, and I would almost say that a lot of emotional or psychological scars are more damaging than physical scars. Because like you said, your knees can heal. I've had injuries. They heal. You forget about them some if they're traumatic. It stays in your head, and you think about it on a daily basis, or you wake up in the night having a nightmare about it. And it's not something that is visible. So like you said, people don't see it about you and recognize that on a daily basis. I think as a whole, we don't see other people and recognize, maybe they're going through something. Maybe that explains, some certain behavior. Instead of getting mad about someone doing something, I think it's important to think, hey, I don't know what their story is. I don't know what's happened to them. I don't know what they're dealing with, because I don't think that I don't think enough of us think about that. I'm super guilty, where that doesn't consciously come into my mind to consider all the time that maybe something serious has happened to this person and I just have no idea. And like you said, be gentle, and I think that's a huge message to people. And I'd like to ask, after that experience, did you find yourself being gentler and kinder to others? Did that have some effect on how you treated other people?
Yes and no. I definitely try, but also one of the symptoms of PTSD is irritability, and my irritability was through the roof. So I actually had a really low tolerance following the shooting, and that carried into work. And I had to do my best by just reminding myself, okay, you don't know what's happening to that other person, and who knows, you could be talking with someone in their, stage 4 cancer. You just never know. So I try my hardest, but I'm definitely guilty of being short with someone on the phone, someone in customer service, or I'm in the hospitality industry. I have really high expectations when I walk into hotels or restaurants, and if I don't feel like, they are doing their best, I have low tolerance there. My husband's like, Emily, watch out. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's interesting. You made a really powerful statement. You don't need to be injured physically by a bullet to be affected by a bullet. And I think that's such an important, powerful statement. And once the emotional scars heal, like you were both saying, you can't see, or once the physical scars heal, you can't see into the emotional scars that remain and are there with you the rest of your life. So they create this artificial mask that we all have. And like you said, Eric, I mean, for everyone watching the podcast, Eric is off camera. He'll probably pop in here. He runs the podcast and gets different camera angles for us. So that was the voice you're hearing off camera. But like you both said, we need to be kinder to each other for sure. And everyone has an important story. Everyone has a story to tell, and everybody has a past. And we don't know what it is, right? Even if we know the person, like I know you, Emily, I didn't know certain parts of your past. I literally just found out today as you were telling us your journey. And now going through something so traumatic, it is hard to think about that in the moment when you're talking with a customer service rep because, your computer's broken or whatever, right? I mean, we are emotional beings, so it's hard to kind of keep that in the forefront of your mind, but it's important to try.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So tell us about what trying is good. So what is this here? This is when you were speaking at the Alliance for Gun Responsibility?
Yeah, so that was actually this January, so just a little over a month ago. That was a big day in Olympia, and that's the day I testified. We had, I think, 4 bills that the Senate was hearing that day, and I testified on high-capacity magazines in particular. This is one that's very important to me because I think part of the reason I'm sitting here talking to you is because of the break that we had in rounds when the gunman was switching to a new weapon or reloading. He was using a bump stock, and last year I testified, and no one even knew what a bump stock was before the shooting. Even police officers, a lot of them didn't know, and that measure, that did pass last year, and those are banned, and every little step helps, but still I was like, why can't we do more? And high-capacity magazines, to me, I personally don't see why someone might need more than 10 bullets in their gun, more than 10 rounds. So that's one that I'm really pushing for. That's the op-ed that I wrote. I was asked to write it while I was out of town. Fortunately, I had my laptop, so I threw that together. And again, I think it'll be out tomorrow. But that's one of the few that has not made it off of the floor yet. A lot of progress has been made this session, but that one, it's just kind of stalled. So this is a last-ditch effort.
Yeah, and that's something that I was going to say. That's something that affects you, right? Like even when you're out of town on vacation, you're still thinking about it. You can almost never escape what happened.
You can't. Yeah, in Florida, I was actually scared to go to Florida last week because they've had 3 pretty big shootings recently. But yeah, it's always with you. And I meant to say in that picture that followed my testimony, there was a press conference after, and so that's what that photo is from.
Okay, great. And was this part of that, or you're with the governor here?
So that was actually the prior year. So that was January of 2018, and that's when Senator Frocht asked me to come testify, and Kyle did too. That's my husband there. And afterwards, we had the opportunity to meet with Governor Inslee, his wife Trudy, and then the gentleman who you see in the wheelchair, his daughter actually died in the Route 91 shooting, and so he was there as well. Had the opportunity to meet him.
Yeah, and did anything positive come out of that? Any follow-ups?
Bump stocks were banned after that day, and yeah, I think it was positive. It was a great opportunity to meet with Governor Inslee. The fact that he was open to giving us 10 minutes in his office was fantastic, and I have seen his wife Trudy at a couple of other events since then. So yeah, I'd say it was good.
Time well spent. Okay, good, excellent. And you and your husband actually married after that, is that right?
Yes. Yep.
So one thing I wanted to switch a little bit because what the hell? You and your husband chose to go to Albania for your honeymoon. Nothing against Albania, but who chooses to go to Albania for their honeymoon?
Not my choice. I would have rather been in a over-the-water bungalow in Fiji, but
Amen,
Kyle,
sister.
working at RAI, being surrounded by all these outdoor enthusiasts, our compromise was to go to Europe and start in Croatia and have a little beach time there. Go to Montenegro. Okay, that's still sounding fine. Start out at the beach. And then we drove to the mountains. A German man from Albania came and dropped off a rental car to us that we weren't sure was actually going to make it, but it did. And so we drove to Montenegro and did a couple days of hiking. And then from there, we drove to Albania. Kyle had a couple of colleagues that went there and just swore by the hiking. Albania is not known for its tourism, and it was interesting. And so, is that picture? Yep. So down here, let's see if can I draw? Well, what you're
can
pointing
draw.
at,
Yeah, you can draw. You can draw.
this guy
Yep.
looks like a river, right? That is not river. That's all scree. That's all loose rock that we had to walk across to get to where I am there. And
Oh my
it was
God.
after a few miles of that where I was cursing up a storm and I was so grumpy. And I stuck with it, and we finally made it to the top. And it was at the top where I turned to Kyle and I was like, this is amazing. Like, I'm so sorry for being grumpy. I love you. So we had a great hike there. But again, Albania, like, not known for tourism. We were staying in a bed and breakfast type place, if that's what you want to call it, where I think it was like, I don't know, $50, and both of us got 3 meals included. But there are no restaurants in town, no type of shops or anything. So we ended up leaving there a day early and went and found a beach before we headed to Greece, which is where we ended the honeymoon by beaches.
Awesome. Well, now that's where you want to go on your honeymoon is Greece. Go on. That sounds great.
Yeah, it was Kyle's least favorite part, but it's all about compromise, right?
That is true. It is always all about compromise. But I think it's great because obviously your marriage survived the trip, right? Like both smiling, happy faces. That's a good thing. That's always a good sign.
Yep.
I think it's really wonderful that having gone through something so emotionally powerful and draining that you and your husband were able to build something positive out of it, right?
Yeah, is there any other option? For us, there wasn't any other option. And it's been difficult because Kyle is just your guy's guy. No drama. He's just a very kind, down-to-earth person who's not an over-communicator. I, on the other hand, I am sensitive, and I am big on communication and talking about feelings. And so we did go to therapy together after that and learned how to communicate. And there was a day when we were dating where I was flying home from Alaska for work, and I caught the flu in Alaska while I was ice fishing. It was terrible. Don't ever do that. And so barely made the flight home, and I was in my condo just dying. Felt like I was dying. And he came and brought me soup, but he left it at the door. He wouldn't even come in. And so we've had to go from that to like, no, honey, when I need you, like, you need to be nice to me. If I want to hug, you need to hug me, even if I'm sick. So we've definitely learned how to communicate with each other since then.
Well, as the CEO of essentially a communications company, I can tell you that's very important. So bravo. Good job on that. Excellent. Well done. Let me just see. I got a couple other images here from Montenegro. That looks gorgeous, actually. It was really
That was
beautiful
pretty
here.
epic. Loved that
Jeez.
one.
There's another one I think you sent me. Let's see. What's this one? Oh, that's a great
That's
photo.
also Montenegro. Yeah.
Is that the same area?
Nope. That's different.
Different, yeah. I was
All
like
kind of
your
looks
clothes
the
are
same, right?
your clothes are very different. I'm like, I hope that wasn't the same day.
That day was a little windy, so a few more clothes on that day.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So one thing I wanted to ask was if you've ever thought about this. So virtual reality has actually been quite successful at solving, or at least helping people with certain types of anxieties, even PTSD. Have you thought about anything like that? Maybe there's something that the VR industry, which is, um, is thriving in our region in Seattle, where we live. Have you thought about like maybe there's something here that virtual reality can help with people who suffer from PTSD?
I haven't. You're probably the right person to talk about that. I was a little relieved when I learned that you don't need a headset to do this because I don't like things covering my eyes anymore. That's one change. When I first started in my job, my first week on the job, I had the incredible opportunity to try Tree, virtual reality, and that was incredible. But if I were to do that now, I'm not sure how I would do with that. But
Yeah,
I
the
am
Tree
open to
VR.
trying anything.
Oh, good. Yeah, the Tree VR experience. If anyone doesn't know about it, Google it. If you can do it in a 6 degree of freedom VR headset, like a Vive or something, do that. But it's extremely emotional. People leave that thing sobbing.
Yep.
Yeah,
For
it's
sure.
you're a tree. You're a tree that gets in a rainforest. I'll leave it at that. But it's and you kind of experience deforestation. But that's an emotional experience, and maybe there's something that this industry can do to help. And nothing's coming to mind, quite frankly. But I know that there are people working on it. So I'm happy to do some research and send you some stuff.
Thanks. And going off of that, so I think it's the same company. So Tree, it's a part of there are 3 different components, and there's the first one where a family is in hiding, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's supposed to resemble a war zone. And the reason these are being done is to educate people and make it a little more realistic so they understand what people are going through. And so that one was humans who are harming other humans. The Tree, it's like humans harming nature and wildlife. And then the third part, which I did not get to experience, I don't think it was completed yet, is how we can help one another. I would never want to put anyone through what we went through. What was it, like 1,100 rounds in 10 minutes? I don't want anyone to ever experience that. But maybe there's something that can be done where people can understand the impact of gun violence and that this isn't okay. This cannot be the new norm. Kids should not have to go to school fearing for their lives. So, yeah, maybe there is something.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Kids should definitely not go to school fearing for their lives. It doesn't matter where you go to school. It doesn't even matter where you go to school in America. That's just not okay. So,
right.
Yeah, really, really wonderful to have you on, Emily. I love your story. It's so powerful. Is there anything we can do to help you?
At this time, I don't know. I will have to report back to you. But thank
Yeah,
you
get back to
for
me.
asking.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're here to support you, here to help. Yeah, just let me know. But one thing we like to ask our guests that come on is give us one thing to embrace and one thing to avoid. And it could be anything. It could be, hey, I read this great book on vacation, or I went to this, awesome Italian restaurant, or you really want to avoid, reading this book or whatever it is, or this app. It's just horrible. Anything come to mind?
I am going to be just super cheesy here and boring and lame, but I'm going to say life, and don't take a single day for granted because you don't know how many days you have left. I mean, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Like, who knows? But just live every moment. Say yes. Yes can get you into some fun situations. Be smart when you say yes, but say yes.
Yeah, definitely be smart. But I love that. That's great. Anything to avoid?
Avoid avoidance. And
Ooh,
this is
that's
something
good.
that, I learned in therapy and something I'm working on now. just because you're scared of something or don't want to be in an uncomfortable situation. Like for me, I hate fireworks, but I need to learn not to avoid the 4th of July. What used to be one of my favorite holidays, or Mariners opening day when all the fireworks go off. Like I need to remember to not avoid, no avoidance in life. And that just leads you right back to what you should embrace, which is life and every day.
I love it. I love that so much. Go ahead, Eric. You said.
I think those answers definitely set the bar a lot higher for that question now. So thank you, Emily.
They do. Thank you. Yeah, we've had people tell us to avoid like a burrito joint or, so.
I want to know that. That's important too.
That is a very important, yes. Pretty good thing to avoid is the bad burrito joint. Thank you. It's been so much fun. I would love to have you back and just tell us about the progress you're making.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Emily.
Emily,
have a wonderful day.
One last question before you leave here. If people want to contact you on social media or, to offer support for what you're doing nowadays and to help you, with your initiative to kind of, push maybe smarter regulations on firearms, or in any other aspect of your life, what would be the best way for people to reach you? Is that social media? Is that email?
Yeah, I think social media is great. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. Twitter is good. What is my handle on Twitter? I should know this. I am at Seattle City Gal on Twitter. So I'd say that's a good way. But
cool.
People.
And I think you are at SEA City Gal. Is that right?
I'm looking now. It shows Seattle spelled out.
Oh, so Seattle. Okay, cool. My bad. Seattle City Gal. Excellent. Everybody be nice. Come on. Everybody be gentle to each other. And by the way, if you're not, it's pretty easy to block people and to mute people. So that's nice.
That much is true.
Yeah. And social media, let's all remember, is a totally free service that no one is in any way obligated to use. People treat it like they're obligated to respond,
right.
But you don't need to.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. But reach out to Seattle City Gal. Great question, Eric.
Thank you for asking, Eric.
Thank you for your answer. No, I don't think I have anything else. I think you've answered all of my questions excellently. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Wonderful to have you on. See you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.
See ya.